Welcome back to another tutorial. So in last week's tutorial we implemented a big white slime that chases the player around and just tries to be mean to the player by swallowing it, shooting at it with all types of projectiles. Now having a player just being chased around doesn't really do much since there is no collision, there's no damage. The worst that happens is you just turn into a big white slime and you're sort of able to control that slime to some degree. So in this week's tutorial, we are going to be implementing collision detection between melee characters and the player, as well as melee characters and projectiles and the player. So collision detection in a whole. Now to start off with, I just want to remove the boss so that it's no longer a boss, it's ranged monsters and ranged monster. Awesome. And then Control C, Control V to make it melee monsters and melee monster. Awesome. Now then in creation we specifically want to be awesome. Now we can just copy this, paste this, now I'm just quickly running through all of this because we already went through how to add a typed group to the scene, add monsters to the typed group, so there's no real reason for me to go through and explain each step. So I just quickly copy pasted it. Now with this part, we can probably just zoink this line. Okay, now for this part, we say ranged monsters and dot add new ranged monster, add a random float value between 0 and 500 as well random dot float 0 and 500. Now there's no specific reason why we would use random above, say for instance just the normal random value that Hax gives us. I just thought it would be cool to use it here, no specific reason. And we want the player to be the target and the projectile type would be firebolt. Awesome. Now we also want to add melee monsters, so add new melee monster, or well, basically the same values. A copy, and then we also want to set the target to be player. Cool. Now we want to add a bit more than just one of each, so we'll bump it up to 10. Cool. Under the update, we can change this so that it is ranged monsters and handle. So I just want to change the function name since it's ranged monsters. It's dumb to say monster fire, so we specifically say handle ranged monsters, and then we just go down. Cool. So this all seems to be the same as with the other one. Didn't we update? Yeah, there's a projectile. Okay, that's weird that Oops, my mistake. Projectiles. Add projectile. That was a bit of a dumb move from my part. Sorry about that. That should have been back in when we specifically optimize the projectile code. monsters. Cool. Cool. Okay, now back to the update function. So we specifically want to check for collisions between a few different things. So check for collisions. Now, HaxeFlixel has a few functions to check for collision. They have one for collide, one for overlap, and possibly more, but we're specifically working with collide and overlap. But for this tutorial, we'll just use the collide function. So it takes a few parameters. It starts with we can either pass just an object or just a group. So we specifically want to check which two objects or which two groups, or what object and what group are we checking collisions against. And then we also have the possibility to add a function callback for when a collision is detected between those two. So you can either just collide with the two and just not care. So that would be like in the instance between the player and a wall, we would check for collisions between the two, but we don't really care if they collide. So we don't check to see if the collision detected, and then have the function that runs. So we are going to have 4 collision detections run per frame. First, going to be between the player and projectiles, and then the callback function will just for now say handle, I can spell it, handle player projectile collisions. Cool. So second one, fg dot collide. So I said we'll have 4 collision detections per frame, or per update, not, well, yeah, I guess it's the same thing. So per update function, so we can just Control-C, Control-V to add the rest. So the next one is between ranged monsters, because ranged monsters is in a different group than melee monsters, so we have to specifically check for ranged monsters. And projectiles, because the player shoots projectiles, we specifically want to check if the player shot with the projectile the player spawned collided with the ranged monster, so that we can do damage and delete it if its health goes below a certain point. So next we also want a function callback for now, or function callback that's called monster projectile collision. Now you'll notice that I didn't say projectile monster handle projectile monster projectile collisions. I just said monster projectile collisions because the player will only shoot projectiles. So I think I want to create a function that can handle both cases of monster collision, not just with the projectile, not just 2 different ones per monster. Next is melee monster and then projectile. So this checks if projectile collides with a melee monster. So handle monster projectile collisions. And then finally the last one is between the player and melee monsters, and we'll say handle player monster collisions. So as you can see here, it needs a void function that doesn't return anything, so it's a void function that just gets ran. Cool. So in case something happens, just call this void function. Now we have to set up those functions. So I'll just scroll down to, well, we'll add it after these. So we'll say it's a private function handle player projectile collisions. So it'll pass two values to the function. The first value, well, the values would be the two groups that are that you check for collisions against. So the first one will say player, and since it's projectiles, we'll say projectile of type projectile. Can you just back? Cool. So if the projectile hits the player, we say player dot set position to a random float between 0 and 500 for the X, and the same for the Y. Cool. And also we just want to kill the projectile. So if the projectile hits the player, we want to teleport the player to a random position between 0 and 500 on both the X and the Y. And we want to kill the projectile so it doesn't just keep on flying afterwards. Cool. So next up is private function handle player monster collisions. And then for the monster, it is melee monster. So this checks whether the melee monster has collided with the player. So we just say if so, then we can just teleport the player again. So this is just for testing purposes to see whether our collision detection is up and running. So we don't really care as to whether or not the player dies currently. We'll handle death around the same point that we handle the UI setup, so that we can add a death screen that will allow the player to then respawn at the last checkpoint, or to exit and rage quit and have the user slam their laptops or computers against the wall or whatever. But for now, we'll just teleport the player. So next up is private function handle monster projectile collisions. So you'll notice that each time we say monster, melee monster, player, but the issue is we have two different types of monsters, well, three if you count the boss. So we can't really check on that. So we specifically have to check for FLX object rather than the class that we set up. Now our class extends sprite, which is an object as you've seen through past tutorials. So we can just check for objects. So next up is the projectile again. We scroll back and scroll down a bit, since it's not like at the bottom of the screen the whole time. Cool. So we want to kill the monster if the projectile collides with it, and we also just want to kill the projectile. Cool. That should be everything. 22. Yep, imported. Control save. Now I'm getting an error. Where is it? Okay, also have to include that. Control save. Cool, that should work. Now if we press F5, let's see if we can run around, shoot some bad guys, get shot, probably ourselves. Now it's building, it's running, and it's up. Ooh, so we can still move, but you'll notice as the ranged units can fire at the can actually kill the melee units, and we can kill the melee units. We can also kill the... Wait, where am I? Ah, it's respawned. I'm down here. Okay, so we can kill the ranged units, we can kill the melee units. The ranged units can kill the melee units, which we don't want. It's kind of dumb to do that. And it's a bit of unnecessary, but also if you'll notice, if we move to the left, so you'll notice that our projectiles are spawned from this top corner. So if we move to the left while shooting right, this happens. We actually end up shooting ourselves. Or as long as we're pretty much as long as we're moving and shooting to the right, we end up shooting ourselves, which we also don't want, but that's a bug to fix on another day. Thank you for watching today's tutorial. Remember to drop a like, subscribe, and follow us on Twitter. But just before you leave, I recently opened my first ever merch store. So you can see it's called 8-Bit Swag, and it's all about developer swag for people. As a programmer myself, I struggle to find a store that sold stickers, hoodies, shirts, things that like have the programming language that you use, the icon on it. So you can see we have hoodies. If I go over to catalog, we have shirts, we have hoodies, we have stickers, and it's, as you can see, it has the like icon of the programming language or the framework on it, and it's really awesome. So, and as you can see, it does take Bitcoin, but you can also pay with PayPal. So I would absolutely love if you guys come support the channel by buying some awesome programmer merch for you and your friends and family. So enjoy your day. Thank you.